Well, hello there, fellow Trekkies. My name is Jason Gilbert. This is Trek Mission Log. I am very, very glad that you're here. I apologize that I wasn't able to get a video out last week with stuff that's going on where I work. We're getting ready for a day camp for kids. My life has been very, very busy and hectic and will be until the end of next week. So I apologize I wasn't able to get a video out last week. I got one out this week. There won't be one next week. But then the following week and every week thereafter, I should be able to get a video out. Also, I share in the sadness with you of the news of the passing of Star Trek legend Nichelle Nichols. She was a fantastic person, an incredible actress, a beautiful lady, and she was a trailblazer. So this episode is lovingly dedicated to her memory. If you're enjoying this content, please subscribe to my channel. It would really help me out immensely. Also, we can interact with each other on Instagram. If you go to the search, type @Trek Mission Log, and you'll find me there, and we can interact with each other there. Now, today I'm going to be reviewing Season 1, Episode 16 of the original series titled Shore Leave. This episode aired on December the 29th, 1966. It was written by Theodore Sturgeon, directed by Robert Spar, and produced by Gene L. Kuhn. So, let's dive in. As the episode begins, we're on the bridge of the Enterprise, and Captain Kirk is waiting for a report from the landing party. They are on a planet investigating it as a possible spot for the crew to have a time of shore leave. And Kirk begins exhibiting signs of a sore back. Spock tells Kirk that everyone on the ship, except for himself, needs a rest, and that includes the captain. Kirk retreats to his quarters. Now, on the planet, Sulu and McCoy are together and they're talking about how incredible this planet is. McCoy said it's like something out of Alice in Wonderland. And after a brief discussion, Sulu leaves to get some plant samples when all of a sudden, McCoy sees a character from Alice in Wonderland, the rabbit who is late. And then as the rabbit goes into the woods, a young blonde female, Alice, asks McCoy if he's seen a white rabbit. He points to the woods and is in shock. We then fade into the title sequence. Kirk and Spock are talking in Kirk's quarters. Kirk has decided to beam down sections of the ship for shore leave. And then McCoy comes on with the communicator and speaks with Kirk and asks him directly if he's beaming down. And then McCoy said he's talking about reporting himself unfit for duty because of the things that he has seen. And he goes on to explain about the white rabbit and Alice. Kirk laughs at it and feels as though McCoy is joking with him. Spock said to Kirk that there was a crew member who clearly exhibited signs that he needed rest and is absolutely refusing. And Kirk said, "This crew member will beam down immediately under my direct order." And then he said to Spock, "Who is this crew member?" And Spock said, "James Kirk. Enjoy your rest, Captain." And this is how Captain Kirk looked when he received that report. Very, very well done here. Now, on the planet, we see a rock lifting on its own, and underneath the rock is an old Earth-style pistol, a revolver. Kirk and Yeoman Barrows beam down together, and they join with McCoy. He shows Kirk giant rabbit footprints in the dirt. Kirk calls up to the ship, speaks to Uhura, and orders that shore leave be postponed until they can determine if it is safe and what is exactly taking place on this planet. Just then, a gunshot is heard in the distance. Kirk and the landing party run over in a very extended run sequence to investigate. They come upon Sulu, who is firing the pistol. Sulu told Kirk that he was thinking about his classic gun collection and how he would love to have one just like this. And then all of a sudden, he spotted that very pistol. Now, Kirk takes it from Sulu. What a killjoy Captain Kirk is. They found the rabbit tracks, and Kirk orders Sulu and Barrows to follow the tracks to see where they lead. Now, as Kirk and McCoy walk in the opposite direction, we see an antenna of some kind, and it is following them. Kirk talks about his days at the academy and how a guy named Finnegan was constantly pranking him, and they come upon rabbit tracks, and they also come upon human footprints. McCoy follows the rabbit tracks, Kirk follows the human footprints. And as Kirk is doing that, he encounters Finnegan, the man that he was talking to McCoy about from his academy days. Finnegan punches him and challenges Kirk to a fight. And as they start fighting, Kirk hears Barrows screaming. And when Kirk gets to her, she reports that someone attacked her and that her attacker tore her shirt and he was wearing a cloak. McCoy said it sounded like Don Juan. Kirk goes looking for Sulu. When he stops and notices a flower, he picks it up and he smiles. It obviously triggered a memory of a past lover in his mind. And then suddenly, a beautiful woman appears and Kirk immediately recognizes her. We then hear a captain's log. Kirk in his log said that they are seeing things that cannot possibly exist, and yet they are undeniably real. Kirk proceeds to speak to this lady from his past. Her name is Ruth. As members of his crew communicate with him through the communicators, he is completely taken with her. Spock calls down and tells the captain that there are strange power readings coming from below the planet's surface, and it's draining the Enterprise of power and is interfering with their communications. There's something on this planet that make things appear as people either think about them or speak about them. Barrows was thinking about a royal dress that a princess would wear, and then suddenly one appears hanging on a tree, and McCoy said he would like to see her in it. A little bit of chemistry between Barrows and McCoy. We then see Sulu walking, following rabbit tracks, when all of a sudden a samurai warrior comes out of the ground to attack him. Sulu tries using his phaser, but it isn't working. Sulu runs away. He finally catches up with Kirk, and just then Spock beams down, but the transporter is having trouble, and in the distance they can hear a tiger growling. Meanwhile, McCoy and Barrows reach the rendezvous point, and because Barrows is dressed as a princess, naturally a knight appears to rescue her from McCoy. Now McCoy said that this isn't real and stood up to the knight. The knight attacked him and McCoy falls to the ground. Kirk, who comes upon that, uses the pistol that Sulu found and killed the knight. And when they get to McCoy, he is dead. When they examine the dead knight, they notice that it is a mannequin of some kind. Spock said that it is a multicellular casting made out of plant material. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but there were 2 other crew members on the planet as well. We've never ever seen them before. One of them started talking about World War II airplanes. Suddenly, 2 planes appear in the sky and begin shooting at one of them, killing one of them. They were not even wearing red shirts. It is shocking. Now, next we see that McCoy's body and the body of the knight have vanished. Spock asks Kirk what his thoughts were before the people that he saw appeared. And as Kirk starts talking about Finnegan, Finnegan appears again. Kirk runs after him, chases him for several minutes until they finally clash and fight. And it was back and forth for several minutes. We got to see one or two powerful Shatner chops. Kirk finally wins the fight, and he asks Finnegan for answers, and there's absolutely no cooperation given. So, Kirk knocks him out. Spock points out that the crew need to control their thoughts. Now, as they run back, the World War II planes that I mentioned a moment ago reappear and attack them. Now, they outrun it, and they come back to find somebody trying to take Barrows. Kirk tells his men and his officers to stand at attention and to concentrate only on that. All of a sudden, a man appears and introduces himself as the caretaker, and he knows them all by name. The caretaker said all of this was meant to amuse them and that nothing is permanent. Kirk said, well, why was McCoy killed? When suddenly McCoy appears and is very well, with a woman on each arm. McCoy said that the ladies appeared when he was thinking about a cabaret that he knew on the planet Rigel 2. Barrows is not amused. When Kirk asked who they were, the caretaker said they were not yet ready to understand the answer to that question. Communications have been restored. Kirk calls up to the ship and orders Uhura to start beaming the crew down for the best shore leave that they would ever have. At that point, Ruth reappears to Captain Kirk. Spock beams up to the ship. And after a couple of days of shore leave, the crew come back aboard. They are well rested. The ship leaves orbit and proceeds on to the next mission. And that is the story of the episode known as Shore Leave. This is certainly not the finest Star Trek episode ever filmed, and at the same time, it is also not the worst one ever filmed. Kind of a middle-of-the-road episode, if you will, which makes this one a little bit harder to watch in that it follows the absolutely incredible episode we reviewed last time called Balance of Terror. Anyway, I will try to be fair as I judge this episode. This is what I call a budget buster episode. What that means is that due to budgetary constraints, the producers had to cheapen out on the episode on things like special effects and actors. It's very noticeable on this episode. Scotty is not present here. Uhura is present, although I believe in the episode only her voice is heard and she is not seen. Scotty's replaced with unknown actors throughout the episode. Obviously, they were being paid a whole lot less than he would have been paid. The setting was a tropical paradise, not unlike what you would find somewhere, say, in Hawaii. So no elaborate sets had to be built. Really, the only special effect that we see in the episode is the transporter effect. So the budget cuts are noticeable here. Also, this episode had some very cheesy elements to it as well. First and foremost, the White Rabbit. All I could say is, wow. All right. I would dare say that even in 1966, that would have been considered cheap and awful. Secondly, this episode had a lot of filler material. For instance, the moments where we see extended sequences of Kirk running. You would think he was training for the Olympics. Also, the chase sequence between Kirk and Finnegan And finally, the fight scene took up several minutes of screen time. It just felt like a waste to me. Thirdly, the love interest between McCoy and Barrows. Now, it's refreshing to see someone other than Kirk have a love interest, but the dialogue between these two rates 11 out of 10 on the cheeseometer. and some of it is awkward. The last thing I will mention on the negative side is that Spock is sadly lacking in this episode. We see segments of him at the beginning, and then again towards the end. There was a small element in which you see Spock putting things together logically as to what is transpiring on this planet. Now, I would like to have seen more of him, particularly in this episode. I always find it cool when Spock is doing his calculating and his investigation, and there was an opportunity for that here, but they missed it. Now for the things that I really enjoyed. First of all, the premise is really good. Listen, periodically I enjoy visiting an amusement park and like going on the rides and the attractions. And so the idea of an amusement world, at least in my mind, is very cool. Good science fiction elements here, where something that you are thinking of can become reality and you can have an experience beyond your wildest dreams. I like that. And I felt that the episode did a good job conveying that, especially at the end. The fight scene, although long, it looked really good on screen. There were one or two spots where you could see Kirk's stunt double, but other than that, Shatner did a great job. The producers made it very convincing that he went through an ordeal with blood, sweat, and a torn shirt. So good stuff there. I also like that we got to see a bit of a different side of McCoy. And it's something I think that Star Trek never really explored. McCoy's romantic interests. Cheesiness aside, it was kind of neat seeing that side of him. Now, just for curiosity's sake, in case you're interested, Chekhov still has yet to be introduced to the Star Trek universe. He is coming, don't worry. I believe, though, it's not until the second season. This is episode 16 out of 79 original series episodes. What that means is we are now 20.25% of the way through the series. And Chekhov now is at least not present for 1/5 of the series. I just find that fascinating. All in all, I felt that this was a mediocre episode, and because of that, I give Shore Leave 3 out of 5 Starfleet insignias for awesomeness. Well, that wraps up this week's edition of Trek Mission Log. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to read your comments about this episode, so please feel free to drop a comment below. All I ask is that we remain respectful of each other, keep the comments profanity free. Next time, in 2 weeks, I will be reviewing episode 17 of season 1, titled The Galileo 7, and I hope that you'll plan to join me. Until then, live long and prosper.